All right, guys, let's do some. Actually, Matt, do we have? Let's do a few Discord questions, then we'll do a little sounds, and then I haven't heard back from Joshua. Let's do a few. Let's do a few Discord questions, then we'll come get them on.
I think it's so funny in that clip, by the way, though, that Hitchens does return to his old commie self just because somebody's attacking atheism.
That is, yeah, no, I know, I know.
All right, here we go. For tonight, we have from Uma. I'm learning about the response to NYC going bankrupt in the 70s, and it seems fundamentally private banks suddenly stopped taking on municipal bonds and debt, so cities couldn't keep borrowing to finance public services, e.g., CUNY free tuition. So how do municipalities get access to credit now? With the public sector strikes we are likely to see going forward and the stops of municipal budgets and borrowing, what should these unions bargaining for the common good be demanding? A public bank? I just recommend. I wonder if she's referring to Kim Phillips Fine's book, Fear City, about the hollowing out and neoliberalization of New York City's government. What do you guys have to say about that?
I mean, I can't speak too much for the history of New York City. I will just say, the federal government's trying to buy municipal bonds in the short term for the crisis. But I mean, this is something that I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago about reclaiming the local. The fact that cities are so incapable just because of the way our system is set up of being able to finance themselves is a huge problem, and something that I think we on the left need to be taking a lot more seriously, because that's the most direct contact that most people have with, government programs, and could be doing a lot more to help people out in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and I'll look more into that. I think that all. I mean, I need to know more about that. And look, I am familiar with the book Matt referenced, but we'll get into it more. Okay, let's do another Discord question, then a clip or two, and then we'll get to Joshua.
All right, Archonk Dej. Question here: do you think left organizations can convince Bernie supporters to vote for Biden out of self-interest of wanting to fight a weaker Democratic Party as opposed to a rising fascist movement? For instance, what if voters organized and agreed to vote for Biden and agreed to go on a student loan strike immediately after Biden was elected? I mean, that'd be very nice.
Well, let's start doing. I want to just say, I'd start that now.
Right.
See, this is actually a very concrete step that you could take now. All of these conversations about strikes and actions should start now.
Yeah.
In other words, that needs to be the center of the conversation. And this is how you start to practically differentiate programs.
Mm-hmm.
The main concern right now is not voting for Biden. The main concern is things like meaningful strike activity.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and I think some people will be convinced. I think some people won't be convinced, and we've laid it out,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the best we can do.
One more.
Yeah, let's do one more.
From Jim Jimster, I continually hear about how the left needs to build more institutional power. Bernie's campaign would be great to roll into some sort of continued organization. There's also DSA, which I joined a few months ago. Are there other examples of existing institutions that the left should try to look to strengthen? I'm trying to get a tangible understanding of what institutional power means.
Labor unions. We need to have, and also, I'll talk more with Adolph Reed and Willie Leggett about the Medicare for All campaign in South Carolina. That's a really significant one.
Mm-hmm. Tenant unions.
Yeah, tenant unions. I mean, look, we can expand outward. Adolph Reed's written very well about, the different categories of labor and how that can be expanded out. But I think that Chris Small's interview is the most important interview we've done in some respects. And so I think, or the Teamsters I talked about, and new forms coming together. And then on the other end, I do think some of the real, if you get concrete about certain mutual aid projects, community-supported agriculture, and that smart, empowered localism. I think some people have I think there is still opportunities on local and state levels to assert authority in democratic parties. But I think that requires, again, a very deep institutional understanding. And one of the things we will be covering, not tonight, but in the future, is this Bloomberg consulting firm in the campaign and the danger that poses for even the viability of having all these endless conversations about what can happen with the Democratic Party. Nando and Waz and I talked about that on Woke Bros, which you should subscribe to on iTunes. Any others?
We got one final one here.
Yeah.
Are there any good left thinkers and readers that talk about how the form of media inform capitalist ideology and socialization? This is something I've been thinking a lot about as the internet becomes the primary medium through which we communicate with other people. I wish I had a good answer to this because
That's an interesting question.
I've actually thought about. Upon research, I've never read his work. Have you guys read Christian Fuchs?
No.
He's who comes up for Marxist media criticism. I haven't read his work on.
I mean, there's Stuart Hall.
Right, Hall's great. Yeah, definitely read Hall Foundational. I don't know anything recent though.
Yeah, but I would actually also look at it's not recent either, but I would also actually look at Marshall McLuhan and Neil Postman.
Yeah, Postman's they're not
and
necessarily
maybe
Marxist,
some
interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And maybe some of the Chomsky manufacturing consent stuff is relevant in that framework too.
Probably. Yeah.
But actually, like, it's a really over-repeated, it's become a cliche, but the medium is the message is very important.
Mm-hmm.
To understand that you're not on neutral mediums, and to understand that when you're playing, like all the platforms we're on hyper-capitalist platforms. That doesn't mean it's not immoral. It's not like, it's great that we can operate in the terrain, but you got to know.
A capitalist is writing the checks.
A capitalist is writing the checks, and it incentivizes different things. That's
right.
Another reason. That's another way of critiquing, the Vampire Castle stuff. It's literally incentivized by the medium, all the drama and the bullshit. All right. Let's start with some sound, and then we'll get to Joshua. We'll do some sound with him too, but I want to just talk about, let's just do this out of the gate. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump, as everybody knows, is using these Corona briefings to indulge his deepest appetites for, like, just kind of embarrassing state media. As always the case, occasionally he's very astute. Occasionally he punctures some media myth. And again, as always, we can't just freak out about him. We have to look at what he's appealing to, and how he's appealing and how he's doing the appealing. However, there's this, he can't be sort of fetishized either. He's also like an obese fool who's losing his shit and is clearly extremely anxious about his reelection, because he knows he screwed up on Corona. He knows he's bringing us into a Great Depression. He knows that this is going to hit his base geographically very hard. And he also wants all of the credit, but none of the blame, and he sees an opportunity to consolidate power. Here he is claiming, and again, we won't belabor it. This was a good opportunity for various sociopaths like Liz Cheney and Ben Shapiro to say, that's not constitutional. In fact, this is quite literally not constitutional.
I order you to open your schools. I order you to force kids to be able to go.
Yes, Mr. President. Following up on that, there are two consortiums of states today, California, Oregon, Washington on the West Coast, northeastern states, totally representing about 100 million people, who said they're going to cooperate and decide when to reopen.
Well, they can decide, but
does that undermine what you're trying to do?
No, not at all. Let me just tell you, very simple. I'm going to put it very simply. The President of the United States has the authority to do what the president has the authority to do, which is very powerful. The President of the United States calls the shots. If we weren't here for the states, you would have had a problem in this country like you've never seen before. We were here to back them up, and we've more than backed them up. We did a job that nobody ever thought was possible. It's a decision for the President of the United States. Now, with that being said, we're going to work with the states because it's very important. You have local governments. They're pinpointed. It's really, you talk about, it's like a microchip. They're pinpointed. We have local government that hopefully will do a good job. And if they don't do a good job, I'd step in so fast. But no, they can't do anything without the approval of the President of the United States.
Okay, so stepped in tremendously by letting companies price gouge and absolutely screw up ventilator ability and delivery across the country, not set up the proper protection mechanisms that in conjunction, and it is very clear now, I would say, that there was definitely dishonesty on the part of the Chinese government. That basically you have like a fusion of initial level dishonesty in the response, and then Trump late into January, and I think even February, being like, it's going to be like a miracle. It's just going to go away. Mm-hmm. Then stopping flights with China, even though it was coming from Europe.
Yeah.
So thanks, dude.
You know, reporters shouldn't play up the differences between Fauci and Trump. I think that is dangerous. But one way that reporters are actually doing good work is when they say, hey, what were you actually doing in February? Because what that forced Trump to do is basically say, we were proactive. A lot of countries, they are in a real tough spot because they weren't. And look, he wasn't proactive. But it's good that he has to say that being proactive is good right now, because a whole bunch of Republicans are like, we need to reopen this shit now. Like, right. Like it's a weird thing, but it was very odd to hear him be like, a lot of countries, they weren't so aggressive as we were, and they're in real tough shape right now. And
that's exactly right. And it actually, yes. And it totally it's a counter program. Although, you know, to the like, let's get stuff open thing.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.